The stagecoach rattled to a dusty halt in front of the general store in Palisade, Colorado, and Warren Gallagher felt his heart drop straight through his boots when he saw the woman descending with careful, measured movements, one hand gripping a sturdy wooden cane. This was not what he expected when he sent away for a mail-order bride 6 months ago. The letters had been practical, honest about most things, but Zelda Lawson had never once mentioned anything about a physical disability. Warren stood there frozen, his worn hat in his hands, watching as she planted the cane firmly in the Colorado dirt before taking each step. Her dress was simple but clean, a faded blue that had seen better days, and her dark hair was pulled back in a sensible bun. She was younger than he thought she would be, maybe 22 or 23, with a face that might have been pretty if it was not set in such determined, almost defiant lines. The stagecoach driver handed down her single carpet bag, tipping his hat briefly before climbing back up to his perch. Warren finally forced his feet to move forward, acutely aware of the townspeople watching from porches and windows. Palisade was not a large town, situated in the Grand Valley along the Colorado River, and news traveled faster than wildfire through dry brush. "Miss Lawson." His voice came out rougher than intended. She turned to face him fully, her green eyes meeting his with a directness that caught him off guard. "Mr. Gallagher, I assume you received my telegram." Warren's mind raced back through the past few weeks. No telegram, nothing explaining this situation. "I am afraid I did not get any telegram, madam." Something flickered across her face, some emotion too quick to catch, before her jaw tightened. "Of course not. The telegraph operator in Denver promised he would send it 3 days ago. I should have known better than to trust promises." An awkward silence stretched between them while the September afternoon sun beat down on the dusty street. Warren was a tall man, accustomed to covering ground quickly on his ranch, always moving at the pace his work demanded. He shifted his weight from one boot to the other, not sure what to say or do next. "I suppose you are having second thoughts," Zelda said, her voice level but something vulnerable hiding beneath the words. "I would understand if you wanted to send me back. I have enough money saved for passage at least as far as Kansas." The words jolted Warren out of his stunned silence. He looked at her properly then, saw the exhaustion in the set of her shoulders, the dust from days of travel coating her clothes, the way her hand trembled slightly where it gripped the cane. Whatever had happened to cause her injury, this woman had traveled over 1,000 miles to get here, knowing full well she was not what he expected. "No," he heard himself say. "No, I am not sending you back. We made an agreement through our letters. A deal is a deal." Relief washed over her features so quickly she could not hide it, though she tried. "Thank you. I promise I can keep house. The leg does not affect my ability to cook or clean or manage household duties. It just takes me longer to walk distances, and I cannot do heavy lifting or stand for too long without resting." Warren picked up her carpet bag, noting how light it was. Everything this woman owned in the world could apparently fit in one small bag. "We should get you out of this sun." "My wagon is just down the street. Are you hungry? The hotel has a decent dining room." "I have not eaten since yesterday morning," she admitted. He glanced at the short distance to where his wagon waited. To him, it was perhaps 50 yards, nothing at all. But watching how carefully she moved, how she had to plan each step, he realized it might as well be a mile for her. "How about we go to the hotel right here instead?" he suggested, nodding to the building directly beside them. "It is closer and their food is just as good. We can collect the wagon later." Zelda looked at him with surprise, then something that might have been gratitude. That would be appreciated. The hotel dining room was nearly empty this time of day, the lunch crowd gone and dinner still hours away. Warren guided them to a table by the window and pulled out a chair for her. She sank into it with poorly concealed relief, leaning her cane against the wall beside her. "Tell me what happened," Warren said once they had ordered coffee and sandwiches from the proprietor's wife. "To your leg, I mean. If you do not mind speaking of it." Zelda's hands wrapped around the coffee cup when it arrived, as if drawing warmth from it despite the September heat. "A wagon accident 2 years ago. I was working as a seamstress in Philadelphia, walking home from a delivery. A freight wagon lost control coming down a hill. The driver could not stop it. I tried to get out of the way, but I was not fast enough." She said it matter-of-factly, but Warren saw her knuckles go white around the cup. "The wagon wheel went right over my left leg, crushed the bones badly. The doctor did what he could, but it healed wrong. I can walk, but not without pain and not without the cane. Some days are better than others. Cold weather makes it worse." "Philadelphia to Colorado is a long journey," Warren said carefully, "especially with an injury like that. I had my reasons for leaving." Her voice had gone flat, and Warren knew better than to push. Their food arrived, and they ate in relative silence. Warren watched her from the corner of his eye, noting the efficient way she moved, nothing wasted. She had a practical air about her, something determined that he found himself respecting despite his initial shock. "I should tell you about the ranch," he said, pushing his empty plate aside. "It is about 5 miles outside town. Not a big spread, but it is mine, paid for fair and square. I run cattle mostly, some horses. I have one hired hand, a man named Joe Preston, who has been with me for 3 years. He sleeps in the bunkhouse. The main house is small but solid. 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, a sitting room." "2 bedrooms?" Zelda asked. Warren felt heat creep up his neck. "I figured we should take our time getting to know each other properly before becoming properly husband and wife. I am not the kind of man who would force the issue." The tension in her shoulders eased slightly. "That is decent of you." "I try to be a decent man," Warren said simply. "I will not lie and say I was not shocked when I saw you step off that stage. But I have been thinking while we sat here, and I realized something. You knew coming here that I might turn you away. You knew I had certain expectations based on our letters. Yet you came anyway. That takes courage." Zelda met his eyes across the table. "Or desperation." "Maybe both," Warren acknowledged. "But either way, you are here now, and I gave my word. We will make it work. Just like that." There was disbelief in her voice, just like that. Warren stood and placed some coins on the table. "Come on. Let me show you your new home." The walk to the wagon was slow. Warren found himself adjusting his pace without thinking about it, matching his longer stride to her careful, measured steps. Several townspeople watched them pass, and Warren nodded to them civilly while resisting the urge to glare. "Let them look." Zelda kept her eyes forward, her chin up, refusing to show any shame or embarrassment. Getting her up onto the wagon seat proved awkward. The cane made it difficult, and Warren finally asked, "May I help you up?" She hesitated, then nodded. He placed his hands at her waist, lifting her as gently as he could while she used her good leg to push off. She gasped once, whether from pain or surprise he could not tell, but she settled onto the seat without complaint. He handed her the cane and went around to the other side. The September afternoon was warm but not oppressively so, and the cottonwood trees along the Colorado River were just beginning to show hints of their autumn gold. Warren drove the team at an easy pace, acutely aware of every bump in the road that made Zelda brace herself with her free hand against the seat. "Tell me about the ranch," she said after they had left the town behind. "What will my duties be? Cooking mostly, if you are able." "I can manage, but my skills run more toward beans and bacon than anything fancy. Keeping the house clean, maybe tending a kitchen garden if you are interested. I handle the livestock and the heavy work outside. Joe does too. And winter? You said cold weather affects the leg. Warren had not thought about that, but now the concern settled in his gut. Colorado winters could be brutal. We will figure something out. Maybe we can arrange things so you do not have to go outside much when the snow is deep. They rode in silence for a while, the wagon creaking along the rutted road. The landscape opened up around them, the grand valley spreading wide with the Book Cliffs rising in the distance. It was beautiful country, Warren thought, though he supposed beauty did not matter much if you were struggling to walk. "Why did you send for a mail-order bride?" Zelda asked suddenly. "You are not an old man. You seem capable enough. I would think women in town might be interested." Warren kept his eyes on the road. "There are not many unmarried women in Palisade. The few there are have known me since I was a boy, and I have known them. It is hard to see past that familiarity, I guess. And ranching is lonely work. I wanted a partner, someone to build a life with." "Not a love match, then?" "I am not fool enough to expect love from a business arrangement," Warren said honestly, "but I hoped for companionship, respect, maybe affection given time." "That is more than I expected," Zelda said quietly. "Most men in my experience just want someone to cook and clean and warm their bed." "I am not most men." "No," she agreed, studying his profile. "I am beginning to see that." The ranch house came into view as they crested a small rise. It was indeed small, just a simple wood frame structure with a covered porch, but it looked solid and well maintained. A barn stood nearby, along with a corral where several horses watched their approach with idle interest. The bunkhouse was a smaller building set off to one side. Warren pulled the wagon up to the front porch, grateful that at least there were only 2 steps to navigate. He climbed down and came around to help Zelda, but she was already lowering herself carefully, determination written in every line of her body. "I need to learn to manage," she said when he reached for her. "I cannot rely on help for everything." "Accepting help when it is offered is not weakness," Warren said. "It is practicality." She paused, then nodded slowly. "You are right. I apologize. I have gotten defensive about it." "Understandable." He offered his arm, and this time she took it, letting him bear some of her weight as they climbed the 2 steps to the porch. The inside of the house was Spartan but clean. The main room held a simple table and chairs, a worn sofa near the fireplace, and shelves lined with books. The kitchen area was functional, a cast iron stove and a dry sink with a pump. 2 doors led to what must be the bedrooms. "That one is yours," Warren said, pointing to the door on the right. "It has the better window, catches the morning light. Mine is there. The necessary is out back, about 30 yards. I know that is not ideal for you, but I could bring in a chamber pot for nighttime if that would help." Zelda looked around the space with something like wonder. "It is more than I expected. Much more." "It is not fancy," Warren said, suddenly seeing the shabby furniture and bare walls through her eyes. "It is clean and solid and mine," Zelda said firmly. "That is more than I have had in 2 years." The weight of that statement hung in the air between them. Warren cleared his throat. "Let me show you the bedroom. You should rest. It has been a long journey." Her room was simple, a bed with a quilt, a dresser, a washstand, and that promised window overlooking the eastern pasture. Warren set her carpetbag on the bed and stepped back. "I will let you get settled," he said. "I have some work to do in the barn before supper. Come out when you are ready, or if you are too tired, I can bring something to you." "Thank you, Warren." It was the first time she had used his given name, and something about hearing it in her voice made his chest feel strange. He nodded and left, closing the door gently behind him. Outside, he found Joe Preston mending a section of fence near the barn. Joe was older than Warren by about 15 years, weathered and lean, with a salt and pepper beard and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "So that is the bride," Joe said without preamble. "Saw you coming up the road. That is her. She has got a limp. I've got eyes, Joe. You planning to keep her?" Warren turned to face his hired hand squarely. "Yes, we had an agreement. The limp does not change that." Joe studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Fair enough. She seems like she has got steel in her spine. Might be she will fit in here just fine. That is what I am hoping." Warren picked up a hammer and started helping with the fence, grateful for work that kept his hands busy and his mind from spinning in circles. Inside the house, Zelda sat on the edge of the bed, her cane propped beside her, and finally allowed herself to cry. Silent tears of relief, of exhaustion, of hope she was afraid to fully acknowledge. She had been so certain Warren would send her right back to the stage once he saw her. Most men would have. The fact that he had not, that he had even slowed his pace to match hers, adjusted their plans to make things easier for her, was more than she had dared hope for. The Philadelphia she had left behind was a nightmare of charity homes and pitying looks, of former employers who suddenly had no work for a seamstress, who could not stand at a table for hours at a time, of a landlord who had made his expectations clear when she fell behind on rent. She had saved every penny she could, answered Warren's advertisement in the matrimonial paper with fingers that shook as she wrote. She had told him the truth in her letters, mostly. She was educated, could read and write and cipher. She was a good cook and could manage a household. She had simply left out the one detail she knew might disqualify her entirely. The telegram she had sent from Denver had been a last-minute decision, a moment of conscience that had cost her $2 precious. The fact that it had never arrived felt like fate telling her to take what she could get and be grateful for it. Now, sitting in this small bedroom that was hers in a house that would be her home, Zelda allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, things might work out after all. She washed her face in the basin, unpacked her few belongings, and then took up her cane and went to explore her new home properly. The kitchen was better equipped than she expected. Warren clearly had spent some money on good basics: a solid stove, decent pots and pans, a well-stocked pantry. She found flour, beans, dried beef, some canned goods, and even a precious jar of honey. She was examining the contents of the larder when Warren came back in, wiping his hands on his pants. "I thought I would start supper," she said, "if that is all right." "I need to learn where everything is anyway." "You do not have to do that tonight," Warren protested. "You have been traveling for days. You should rest." "I have been sitting for days," Zelda corrected. "What I need is to do something useful, to feel like I am earning my place here." Warren started to argue, then seemed to think better of it. "All right, but at least sit down while you work. Pull that chair over to the counter. No sense standing if you do not have to." It was such a simple thing, but it made Zelda's throat tight. She did as he suggested, finding that she could reach most of what she needed from the seated position. Warren brought in fresh water from the pump outside without being asked, filled the reservoir on the stove, and then made himself scarce again, saying he would wash up before dinner. Zelda made biscuits and fried some of the dried beef with gravy, set a can of beans to heat. Simple food, but filling and hot. When Warren came back inside, his hair damp and his face scrubbed, his eyes lit up at the sight of the table set for two. "This looks wonderful," he said, and sounded like he meant it. They sat down to eat together as the sun set beyond the western windows, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The food was good, and the silence was comfortable rather than strained. "You never told me," Zelda said after a while. "How old are you? We covered many topics in our letters, but not that one." 28, Warren said, Bought this place 4 years ago, been building it up since. You? 23. And before you ask, yes, I am sure about this. I know my own mind. Warren smiled, a real smile that made his whole face change. I was not going to question it. You have made it abundantly clear that you are quite capable of making your own decisions. Good. They finished eating and Zelda started to clear the table, but Warren stopped her. I will wash up. You cooked, so I clean. That seems like a fair division of labor. That is not how most households work. This is not most households. Warren started stacking plates. Besides, it is practical. You are tired whether you admit it or not. And I am used to cleaning up after myself. Zelda did not argue further, recognizing the sense in it even if it went against everything she had been taught about wifely duties. She watched him work for a moment, this tall cowboy with gentle hands and surprising consideration, and felt something unfamiliar stirring in her chest. Hope, maybe, or the beginning of trust. That night, lying in her new bed in her new home, Zelda listened to the sounds of the Colorado night through her open window. Crickets singing, the distant call of an owl, the gentle movements of the horses in the corral. It was so different from Philadelphia, from the cramped room she had rented in a boarding house where the walls were thin and the streets were never truly quiet. This was peace, she realized. This was what peace felt like. In the other bedroom, Warren lay awake as well, staring at the ceiling and thinking about the woman now sleeping under his roof. He had been prepared for a lot of things when he sent away for a bride. But he had not been prepared for the strange protectiveness he felt when he saw Zelda struggle up those porch steps. Had not been prepared for the satisfaction he felt watching her make herself at home in his kitchen. Had not been prepared for the way her rare smiles seemed to light up something in his chest. This was not going to be the straightforward business arrangement he had imagined. He could see that already. It was going to be more complicated, more challenging. Maybe, he thought as he finally drifted off to sleep, it was going to be better. The next few weeks fell into a rhythm. Warren woke before dawn as always, but he moved quietly through the house, trying not to wake Zelda. He would start the fire in the stove, put coffee on, and head out to do the early morning chores. By the time he came back in, Zelda would be up, dressed, and making breakfast. She proved to be an excellent cook, much better than he had expected. Her biscuits were light and fluffy, her gravy rich and flavorful. She could make a tough piece of beef tender and turn simple vegetables into something worth savoring. Warren found himself looking forward to meals in a way he never had when he was cooking for himself. But it was the small adjustments she made, and that he made in return, that really defined those early weeks. Zelda arranged the kitchen so that the things she used most often were within easy reach. She learned to prepare ingredients while sitting at the table, then moved to the stove only when necessary. Warren built her a small stool to use at the counter, the right height so she could work without standing. Warren slowed his pace when they walked anywhere together, which was not often at first. Zelda seemed determined to prove she could manage on her own, and he respected that. But when they went to town for church on Sunday, he offered his arm without comment, and she took it without protest. The townspeople of Palisade watched them with curiosity at first, but Warren had lived there long enough to have earned respect. If he accepted his mail-order bride despite her disability, then most folks were willing to follow his lead. There were a few disapproving looks from the older women, a few whispers that Warren heard and chose to ignore. Zelda held her head high through it all, her hand light on his arm, her steps slow but steady. "They are talking about us," she murmured as they left the church after that first service. "Let them talk," Warren said. "They will find something else to occupy their attention soon enough. It does not bother you, being the subject of gossip, not particularly. I know the truth of my own life. Their opinions do not change that." Zelda looked up at him with something like admiration. "You are a very self-assured man, Warren Gallagher." "I am a man who learned early that worrying about what others think is a waste of good energy," Warren corrected. "Life is too short for that foolishness." They established a routine of eating supper together, and then sitting on the porch as the evening cooled, watching the sunset paint the book cliffs in shades of purple and gold. Warren would talk about the ranch, about his plans for expanding the herd, about the challenges of water rights and market prices. Zelda would listen, asking intelligent questions, offering occasional insights that surprised him with their shrewdness. She talked less about her own past, but slowly, pieces emerged. Her parents had died when she was young, some kind of fever that swept through their neighborhood. She had been raised by an aunt who viewed her as a burden. She had learned to sew because it was respectable work that she could do to support herself. The accident had taken away her livelihood and her independence in one terrible moment. "The worst part was not the pain," she said one evening, her eyes fixed on the distant mountains. "It was the way people looked at me afterward, like I was broken, like I was less than I had been before." "You are not broken," Warren said firmly. "You are hurt. There is a difference." "Is there?" Zelda turned to look at him. "I cannot do half the things I used to do. I cannot walk without pain. I will never dance again, never run, never climb stairs without planning each step." "How is that not broken?" "Because you are still here," Warren said. "You adapted. You survived. You traveled halfway across the country to start a new life rather than give up. That is not broken, Zelda. That is strength." She stared at him for a long moment, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "You really believe that?" "I do." Something shifted between them that evening. Not love, not yet, but the foundation on which love could be built. Trust, respect, understanding. As September gave way to October, the work on the ranch intensified. Warren and Joe were preparing for winter, making sure the fences were solid, the barn was stocked with hay, the cattle were in good condition. Warren came home exhausted most nights, muscles aching, but he always found energy to talk with Zelda, to listen to her day. She had taken over the household accounts, he discovered, organizing his scattered receipts and notations into a proper ledger. Her neat handwriting tracked expenses and income with a precision that made him realize he had been losing money through simple disorganization. "You have a head for numbers," he said, looking over her work one evening. "I managed the accounts for the seamstress shop where I worked," Zelda said. "The owner was good with needle and thread but terrible with figures. I enjoyed it. It was like solving a puzzle." "Would you want to take over the ranch books entirely?" Warren asked. "I would pay you a portion of whatever you save us." Zelda looked surprised. "You do not have to pay me. I am your wife, or nearly so. The ranch business is family business." "But we are not family yet," Warren pointed out. "Not truly. Not until we go before the preacher and say the words." It was true that they had been living in a kind of limbo. Zelda wore no ring. They had not made any formal announcement beyond what was obvious to anyone who saw them together. In all legal respects, she was just a woman living in his house, and he knew that was starting to cause talk. "I suppose we should do that soon," Zelda said carefully. "Make it official." "Is that what you want?" Warren asked. "I know this was not what you expected when you came here. I would not blame you if you wanted more time." "More time will not change the practical realities," Zelda said. "We made an agreement. I have no desire to break it, unless you have changed your mind." "No," Warren said quickly. "No, I have not changed my mind at all." "Then let us make it official. We can speak to the preacher on Sunday." They were married the following Wednesday in the small church in Palisade with Joe Preston and the preacher's wife as witnesses. Zelda wore the best dress she owned, a simple green cotton that brought out her eyes. Warren had bought a new shirt for the occasion and polished his boots until they shone. The ceremony was brief, the words familiar from 100 other weddings. Warren slipped a simple gold band onto Zelda's finger, and when the preacher told him to kiss his bride, he pressed his lips gently to hers for the first time. It was chaste, respectful, but Warren felt the impact of it down to his bones. They signed the register, accepted congratulations from the handful of townspeople who had gathered to watch, and drove back to the ranch as husband and wife. "Nothing has to change," Warren said as they rode. "I meant what I said about taking our time." "I know," Zelda said, "and I appreciate it. But Warren, I want you to know that I am not afraid of you. I trust you. When the time is right, I will tell you." The autumn weather turned colder, and Zelda's leg began to bother her more. Warren would see her wince when she thought he was not looking, would notice the way she rubbed at her thigh when the ache got bad. He started a fire in the main room every evening, making sure the house stayed warm, and he brought in extra firewood without being asked. One particularly cold morning in late October, he found Zelda in the kitchen, pale and drawn, one hand gripping the counter for support. "The leg?" he asked quietly. She nodded, not trusting her voice. "Come here." He guided her to a chair, then knelt in front of her. "May I?" At her nod, he carefully lifted her skirt just enough to see her left leg. The ankle and calf were swollen, the skin mottled with old scars. He had never seen the injury before, and the evidence of how badly she had been hurt made anger surge through him. Not at her, but at the careless wagon driver, at the unfairness of it all. "I have liniment in the barn," he said. "It is meant for horses, but it works on people too. Would you let me try?" "Yes," she whispered. He fetched the liniment and a basin of warm water. As gently as he could, he bathed her leg, then worked the liniment into the damaged muscles and scar tissue. Zelda gasped at first, then slowly relaxed as the warmth of the medicine and his careful touch eased some of the pain. "Better?" he asked when he was done. "Much better. Thank you." She looked down at him, still kneeling before her, and something in her expression made his breath catch. "You are a good man, Warren Gallagher." "I am just doing what needs doing," he said, but he felt heat rise in his face. "No," Zelda said firmly. "You are going beyond what needs doing. You have been doing that since the day I arrived. I want you to know that I see it and I am grateful." He stood, suddenly awkward. "I should get to my chores." But as he turned to go, Zelda caught his hand. "Warren, tonight if you wanted to, you could stay in my room. I am not saying this out of obligation. I am saying it because I want to, because I am your wife and I want to be your wife in all ways." Warren's heart hammered in his chest. "Are you sure?" "I am sure." That night, Warren knocked softly on Zelda's bedroom door. She opened it wearing her nightgown, her dark hair loose around her shoulders, and she had never looked more beautiful to him. "I will be gentle," he promised. "I know." What happened between them that night was tender and careful and surprisingly sweet. Warren was patient, attentive to every gasp and sigh, making sure Zelda felt cherished rather than used. And afterward, lying together in the narrow bed, Zelda felt something she had not felt since before the accident. Whole. "I am falling in love with you," she whispered into the darkness. "I did not expect to, but I am." Warren pulled her closer, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Good, because I am falling in love with you too." November brought the first real snow, and with it, new challenges. The ground became treacherous for Zelda, her cane slipping on ice, her injured leg struggling with the cold and the uneven terrain. Warren worried about her constantly, especially when he was out working and could not keep an eye on her. One afternoon, he came back from checking fence lines to find her sprawled in the yard halfway between the house and the necessary, her cane a few feet away, her face twisted in pain and frustration. "Zelda!" He was off his horse in an instant, kneeling beside her. "Are you hurt?" "My pride more than anything," she said, but there were tears on her cheeks. "I slipped on the ice. I tried to catch myself, but I could not." Warren scooped her up in his arms without asking permission, carrying her into the house and settling her on the sofa. He examined her leg carefully, relieved to find nothing broken, just the old injury aggravated by the fall. "That is it," he said firmly. "I am building you a covered walkway to the necessary. I should have done it before now." "Warren, that is too much work. I will be more careful." "It is not too much work if it keeps you safe," Warren said. "And I am getting you a pair of boots with better traction. We will go to town this week, and we will have the cobbler make something that will work better on snow and ice. We cannot afford extras like that." "Yes, we can. Your bookkeeping has saved us plenty. We can afford to invest in your safety and comfort." Zelda looked at him with such love in her eyes that Warren felt his chest constrict. "Have I told you lately that I love you?" "Not in the last few hours," Warren said with a smile. "Well, I do, very much." He kissed her then, soft and sweet, and helped her settle more comfortably on the sofa with quilts and pillows. Then he spent the rest of the afternoon starting on that covered walkway, working in the fading light until Joe came to tell him supper was surely getting cold. The special boots made a difference, as did the covered walkway once it was finished. But winter in Colorado was harsh, and there were days when Zelda simply could not manage. Her leg would stiffen with the cold, the pain making her nauseated and exhausted. On those days, Warren did the cooking and the cleaning without complaint, working inside so she would not be alone, talking to her to keep her mind off the pain. "You should not have to do this," Zelda said on one particularly bad day in December. "I am supposed to be taking care of you, not the other way around." "We take care of each other," Warren corrected, stirring the pot of soup on the stove. "That is what marriage is, or that is what our marriage is anyway. But you work so hard outside. You should not have to come in and work more because I am useless." Warren set down the spoon and came to crouch beside her chair. "Listen to me, Zelda. You are not useless. You keep this house running. You manage our accounts. You cook meals that Joe actually looks forward to instead of just tolerating. You have made this place a home instead of just a house. And on days when you cannot do those things because you are in pain, I pick up the slack. That is what partners do. I just feel so guilty." "Then stop feeling guilty and let me help you. Let me love you by taking care of you when you need it the same way you take care of me." She cupped his face with her hand. "How did I get so lucky?" "We both got lucky," Warren said simply. Christmas came, and Warren surprised Zelda with a beautifully carved wooden box that opened to reveal dozens of spools of colorful thread, needles, scissors, and fabric scraps. "I know you had to leave your sewing things behind," he said as she stared at the gift with wide eyes. "I thought maybe you would like to have some again. The woman at the general store helped me pick things out." "Warren, this is too much." "It is not nearly enough," he said. "I want you to have something that is yours, something that you enjoy, and I know you said you used to love sewing." Zelda threw her arms around his neck, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you. Thank you so much." She spent the quiet winter evenings doing needlework, her clever fingers creating beautiful patterns on scraps of cloth. Warren would watch her sometimes, marveling at the way her whole face changed when she was focused on something she loved. "You should sell these," he said one evening, looking at a particularly intricate piece she had just finished. "Who would buy them?" "Plenty of people." Mrs. Henderson at the general store said women are always looking for fine handwork. Quilts, pillowcases, decorative pieces. You could make extra money. "I could contribute to the household," Zelda said thoughtfully. Earn my keep properly. You already earn your keep 100 times over, Warren said. But if it would make you happy to sell your work, then I will support you in that. By February, Zelda had established a small but steady business selling her needlework through the general store. The money was not much, but it was hers, earned through her own skill, and that mattered to her in ways Warren understood without her having to explain. Spring came slowly to the Colorado high country, the snow lingering in shaded hollows even as the days grew longer and warmer. Warren started making plans for the year's work. New calves to brand, fields to plow, fences to mend. But he found himself making those plans with Zelda now, talking through decisions, listening to her opinions. We should invest in better breeding stock, she said one evening, looking over the account books. If we saved for 2 years, we could buy a really good bull. It would improve the herd quality significantly. That is a long time to save, Warren pointed out. But think of the return. Better cattle mean better prices. It would pay for itself within a few years. Warren considered it, then nodded. All right, let us do it. We will set aside a portion every month. Really? Zelda looked surprised. You trust my judgment on this? You have got a head for business that I do not, Warren said honestly. And you have been learning about cattle prices and markets. Why would I not trust your judgment? She smiled at him, the real smile that lit up her whole face. I love you, Warren Gallagher. I love you too, Zelda Gallagher. In May, Zelda told him she was pregnant. She did it over supper, sliding her hand across the table to take his, her eyes bright with joy and nervousness. We are going to have a baby. In December, the doctor thinks. Warren felt his heart stop, then start again double time. A baby, truly. Truly. He was around the table in an instant, pulling her up and into his arms, laughing and maybe crying a little too. We are going to have a baby. But then reality set in and worry followed. The birth. With your leg, will it be safe? The doctor said there is no reason my leg should affect the birth, Zelda assured him. It is my leg that was injured, not anything else. He said I should be fine. Should be. Warren, there are never guarantees with childbirth. You know that, but I am young and otherwise healthy. I will be careful. He held her close, feeling the joy and the fear warring inside him. A child. They were going to have a child, a family. The ranch would not just be his anymore, it would be theirs, something to pass on to the next generation. We need a bigger house, he said suddenly. Zelda laughed. We have months to figure that out. But Warren was already planning in his head, another bedroom at least, maybe a proper parlor, a porch where Zelda could sit and watch the children play. Because if they were having one child, they might have more. He wanted more. He wanted a whole house full of children, of life and laughter and love. The pregnancy was not easy for Zelda. The additional weight made walking even more difficult, and by summer she was mostly confined to the house and the immediate porch area. But she never complained, just adapted as she always did, arranging her life around the new limitations. Warren started building the addition to the house in June, working evenings and Sundays with Joe's help. Zelda would sit in a chair in the shade, doing her needlework and calling out suggestions, and Warren found he loved having her there, even if she could not help with the physical work. You are building a palace, she teased as the new rooms took shape. I am building a home for our family, Warren corrected. There is a difference. By October, the addition was finished. 2 new bedrooms and a parlor with windows facing the mountains. Zelda walked through it slowly, her hand on her swollen belly, tears streaming down her face. It is perfect, she whispered. It is absolutely perfect. The baby came on a cold December night, 2 days before Christmas. The labor was long and difficult, and Warren spent every moment of it terrified that he was going to lose Zelda. But she proved as strong as he always knew she was, and just after dawn, their son came into the world screaming his displeasure at the cold. "He has got good lungs," the doctor said with a smile, handing the baby to Zelda. Warren sat on the edge of the bed, staring at his wife and his son, and felt something in his chest swell so large he thought he might burst with it. "What should we name him?" Zelda asked, looking up at him with exhausted joy. "William," Warren said. "After my father. William Joseph, if you like." "After Joe, since he has been like a second father to me." "William Joseph Gallagher," Zelda said, testing the name. "It is perfect." The first months with a baby were exhausting and wonderful in equal measure. Warren took on more of the household work without being asked, letting Zelda focus on healing and caring for William. He changed diapers, walked the floor with a crying baby in the middle of the night, and discovered a tenderness in himself he had not known existed. Spring came again, and with it, new life on the ranch. The calves were born healthy and strong, and the sale of Zelda's needlework had been so successful that they had enough saved for that breeding bull sooner than expected. "We are doing well," Zelda said one evening, nursing William while Warren checked the account books. "Better than I ever dreamed we could." "We make a good team," Warren agreed. By the time William was walking, a toddler getting into everything with determined curiosity, Zelda was pregnant again. This time the pregnancy was easier, her body knowing what to do, and in the spring of 1888 their daughter was born. "Mary," Zelda said, looking at the tiny red-faced baby. "After your mother." Warren had told her about his mother who had died when he was 15. The fact that Zelda wanted to honor her touched him deeply. "Mary Grace," he suggested. "After your mother too. Perfect." They added on to the house again because 2 children needed more space and because Warren had plans for more if Zelda was willing. She was willing. Despite the difficulties, despite the way pregnancy made her mobility even more limited, she wanted the family they were building. By 1890, they had 4 children: William, Mary, and twin boys named Thomas and Henry. The house had grown with the family, sprawling now with additions, and a big porch where the children played and Zelda sat with her sewing, watching them with contentment in her eyes. The ranch had prospered too. Warren's hard work and Zelda's business sense had paid off. They had one of the best herds in the valley now, and Warren had bought out the neighboring property when it came up for sale. He hired additional hands, men who lived in an expanded bunkhouse and took their meals at the main house, where Zelda presided over the table with quiet authority. But it was not the success that mattered most to Warren. It was the life they had built together. The slow walks they still took in the evenings when Zelda felt up to it, Warren matching his pace to hers without thought after all these years. The quiet conversations on the porch after the children were in bed. The way Zelda would reach for his hand and hold it, her touch saying everything that needed saying. One evening in late summer, with the children playing in the yard and supper cooking on the stove, Zelda and Warren sat on the porch and watched the sun paint the book cliffs in shades of gold and purple. "You ever regret it?" Zelda asked suddenly. "Taking a chance on a broken bride with a cane?" Warren turned to look at her, at this woman who had given him everything that mattered. "You are not broken. You never were. And no, I have never regretted it for a single moment. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, even though I am slow. Even though I cannot do half the things a ranch wife should be able to do." "You do everything that matters," Warren said firmly. "You made this house a home. You gave me a family. You are raising our children to be kind and strong. You manage our business better than I ever could. And you love me despite all my faults, of which there are many." "You have no faults," Zelda said with a smile. "I have plenty. But you love me anyway, the same way I love you, All of you, including the leg that causes you pain and the cane you need to walk. Those things are part of you, and I love all of you." Zelda's eyes filled with tears. "I never thought I would have this. A husband who loves me, children, a home. After the accident, I thought my life was over, but it was just beginning." Warren pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her temple. "It is not over yet. We have got a lot of years ahead of us still. A lot of sunsets to watch, a lot of children to raise, a lot of life to live." The years continued to pass, each one bringing its own challenges and joys. The children grew, and the ranch grew with them. William showed an aptitude for working with horses, while Mary had her mother's head for numbers. The twins were adventurous and wild, always getting into some kind of trouble that required patient parenting. Zelda's leg never got better. If anything, it got worse as she aged, the old injury complicated by arthritis and the wear of time. There were days when she could barely walk at all, when the pain was so bad she could do nothing but lie in bed with hot compresses and wait for it to pass. But Warren never made her feel like a burden. On those bad days, he simply adjusted, the same way he had been adjusting since the day she stepped off that stagecoach. He cooked meals, tended children, managed the house, and did it all without complaint or resentment. "How do you do it?" Zelda asked him once during a particularly bad spell. "How do you not resent being tied to a woman who cannot even walk some days?" "Because I am not tied to you," Warren said. "I am choosing you every single day, the same way you choose me. That is what love is, Zelda. It is choosing each other, over and over, through good times and bad." In 1895, when William was 22 and starting to talk about marrying a girl from town, Warren and Zelda sat on their porch and marveled at how fast the years had gone. "He is so young," Zelda said, watching her oldest son ride off toward town. "He is older than I was when I sent away for a mail-order bride," Warren pointed out. "That is different." "Is it? I was young and lonely and looking for a partner to build a life with. That is what William is doing too." "I suppose you are right." Zelda leaned against Warren's shoulder, comfortable in the way of long marriage. "Do you think he will be happy?" "I think if he is half as happy as we have been, he will be blessed beyond measure." William did marry his girl, and they built a house on the far edge of the ranch property. Mary married a few years later to a banker in Palisade who treated her like a queen. The twins stayed on the ranch, working alongside their father and eventually taking over more and more of the daily operations as Warren aged. By 1900, Warren and Zelda were in their 40s, their hair showing threads of gray, their faces lined with years of sun and laughter and life. They had 7 grandchildren between them, with more on the way. The ranch had become one of the most successful in the valley, known for quality cattle and fair dealing. But success was not what Warren thought about as he helped Zelda into bed each night, her leg too painful now for her to manage alone. What he thought about was the girl who had stepped off that stagecoach 25 years ago, terrified and defiant and heartbreakingly brave. What he thought about was how she had changed his life, how she had taught him that slowing down was not weakness but wisdom, how matching his pace to hers had been the best decision he ever made. "I love you," he whispered to her in the darkness. "I have loved you since the day you arrived, even if I did not realize it then." "I know," Zelda whispered back, "and I love you more than words can say." On their 25th anniversary, Warren threw a celebration at the ranch, inviting half the valley. Joe Preston was still alive, now in his 70s and retired, but still living in a room they had built onto the house for him. He made a toast at the party, his voice rough with age but strong with feeling. 25 years ago, I watched this man accept a bride who was not what he expected. I wondered if he was making a mistake, but I was wrong. Warren and Zelda Gallagher have built something rare and precious. They have built a life based on respect and kindness and real love. They have raised fine children and built a ranch that will last generations. But most importantly, they have shown all of us what marriage should be. Choosing each other every day, no matter what challenges come. That is what love looks like. There were tears and laughter, and Warren held Zelda's hand through it all, feeling the fragile bones beneath her skin, loving her with an intensity that had only grown deeper with time. More years passed. The new century brought changes to the valley. More people, more towns, the beginning of automobiles that Warren viewed with deep suspicion. But the ranch stayed constant, a place where things moved at a pace dictated by cattle and seasons rather than modern rush. Zelda's mobility continued to decline. By her 50th birthday, she rarely left the house, relying on a wheelchair that Warren had ordered from a catalog. It was a fancy thing with big wheels and comfortable padding, and Warren pushed her around the ranch in it, showing her the new calves, taking her to visit the grandchildren, making sure she remained part of everything even when walking was impossible. "You should not have to push me around like an invalid," Zelda protested, though not very hard. "You are not an invalid. You are my wife, and I want you to see everything. I want you to be part of everything. This chair makes that possible, so I am grateful for it." They were old now, their children grown and gone, their grandchildren having children of their own. But the love between them had not diminished. If anything, it had distilled into something pure and essential, stripped of everything unnecessary. On a warm September evening in 1910, 45 years after Zelda first arrived in Palisade, they sat on the porch together. Zelda was in her wheelchair, a quilt over her lap despite the warmth, and Warren sat beside her holding her hand. "I have had a good life," Zelda said suddenly. "Better than I ever dreamed possible." "Me too," Warren agreed. "I have no regrets. Well, except one." Warren looked at her in surprise. "What is that?" "I wish I could have danced with you just once. I wish I could have been the kind of wife who could dance at our wedding, who could run with the children, who could walk beside you without slowing you down." Warren felt his throat tighten. "Zelda, you never slowed me down. You taught me to move at the right pace. To notice things I would have missed if I was always rushing. You taught me that the journey matters more than the speed. Still, I wish I could have danced with you." Warren stood, moving to stand in front of her wheelchair. He held out his hand. "Then dance with me now." "Warren, I cannot stand." "Then we will dance sitting down." He leaned down and gathered her into his arms, lifting her carefully from the chair. She was light now, so much lighter than she had been as a young bride, and he held her against his chest and began to move in slow circles on the porch, humming an old waltz he remembered from years ago. Zelda laughed, wrapping her arms around his neck. "This is ridiculous." "This is perfect," Warren corrected. They swayed together in the golden evening light, an old cowboy and his bride, moving at a pace all their own. Warren's back would hurt tomorrow from the strain, and Zelda's leg would probably bother her. But right now, in this moment, they were just two people in love, dancing on a porch in the Colorado high country. "Thank you," Zelda whispered against his chest, "for everything. For accepting me when you could have sent me away, for loving me despite my limitations. For building this beautiful life with me." "Thank you for stepping off that stage, Coach," Warren said. "Thank you for taking a chance on me. Thank you for teaching me what real love looks like." They danced until the sun set beyond the mountains, until the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. And when Warren finally settled Zelda back into her wheelchair, both of them were smiling through tears of joy. That night, lying in bed together as they had for 45 years, Zelda reached for Warren's hand in the darkness. "Promise me something," she said. Anything. When I am gone, I want you to remember me not as broken or limited. I want you to remember me as the woman who loved you with everything she had, as the woman who built a life and a family with you, as the woman who was complete, even with a limp and a cane. You are complete, Warren said fiercely. You have always been complete, and I will remember you exactly as you are, the strongest, bravest, most beautiful woman I have ever known. Zelda lived another 5 years, her health slowly declining but her spirit remaining strong. She died peacefully in her sleep in 1915 at the age of 65, surrounded by children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Warren held her hand as she took her last breath, and he whispered the words he had said 1,000 times before. I love you, Zelda Gallagher. I will love you forever. Warren lived another 10 years after Zelda passed, long enough to see his great-great-grandchildren born, long enough to ensure the ranch would continue for generations. But everyone noticed how he moved differently after she was gone. He still walked slowly, carefully, as if matching his pace to someone who was no longer there. "Why do you walk like that, Grandpa?" one of his great-grandchildren asked him once. "Like you are waiting for someone." Warren smiled, looking at the empty space beside him where Zelda had walked for so many years. "Because I am, child. I am walking at the pace that will take me to her eventually, and I am in no rush. She taught me that the journey matters more than the speed." When Warren died peacefully in his sleep in 1925 at the age of 83, they buried him beside Zelda in the cemetery in Palisade. The headstone was simple, but the words Warren had requested were carved in elegant script. Warren Gallagher. Beloved husband, father, grandfather, he slowed his pace and found his life Zelda Gallagher. Beloved wife, mother, grandmother, she taught him what love looks like. The ranch continued through the generations, passed down to children and grandchildren who all knew the story of how it began. How a mail-order bride with a limp and a cane stepped off a stagecoach in 1865, and how a cowboy looked past what he expected to see what was truly there. How he slowed his pace to match hers, and in doing so, found everything he never knew he needed. How they built a life together, one slow step at a time, proving that love is not about perfection or speed. It is about choosing each other, accepting each other, and building something beautiful together at whatever pace works for both of you. That was the legacy Warren and Zelda left behind. Not just a successful ranch or a large family, but a lesson about what real love looks like. About how the right person will meet you where you are, match their pace to yours, and walk beside you through whatever comes. And in the end, that was worth more than all the cattle in Colorado, more than all the land in the valley, more than anything else the world could offer. It was everything that mattered.